We are living in a new Gilded Age of extreme inequality and power-mad billionaires calling the shots and dominating business as well as politics. In fact, we are just coming off the first experiment in this country's long history of a power-mad billionaire, by his own calculation at least, occupying the highest office in the land. It was arguably the most catastrophic failure of a presidency in our history, certainly since the Civil War, ending with an attempt to upend the constitutional republic. And now, almost a year after the end of Donald Trump's term in office, we are witnessing another power-mad billionaire attempt to coerce and capture the American discourse. Earlier this year, Elon Musk, CEO and founder of Tesla and SpaceX, bought the website that helped launch Donald Trump's first campaign. And Musk now seems intent on emulating Trump in his new role as head of Twitter. Last night, Musk went on a sort of Mad King off-with-their-heads purge that some are already calling the Thursday Night Massacre. Musk suspended the accounts of several high-profile journalists who work at organizations including CNN, The Washington Post, New York Times. Their alleged infraction, and it's not quite clear they actually did it because we don't have any transparency, was reporting on and sharing information about an account that Musk permanently banned from Twitter the previous day called ElonJet. Now, that account started in 2020 by a then high school student and fan of Musk, posted publicly available information about the location of Musk's private plane. It actually appears to be owned by SpaceX. This is data that is easily accessible online from basically every plane in the sky. It's actually really cool to look at. This is what the real-time flight traffic around the world looked like earlier this evening on one of the sites that tracks it. The FAA requires all planes to send out signals of their real-time location and other flight data. If you think about it for more than 15 seconds, you can understand why you wouldn't want to keep that private. Having that data out there helps to prevent crashes. It keeps people on the ground informed. But according to Elon Musk, sharing that public data on Twitter is equivalent to posting, quote, basically assassination coordinates in obvious direct violation of Twitter terms of service. That's a real stretch for a bunch of reasons, not the least of which is the terms of service he retrofitted to match the infraction. He added them, prohibiting the sharing of anyone's current location without their permission after he banned the ElonJet account. See how that works? And I'm pretty sure this new terms of service is just totally incoherent. I mean, Musk would have violated that rule himself with this selfie that he posted last month saying, quote, just leaving Twitter HQ code reviewed. In his terms, that was assassination coordinates for all the engineers in that room. But that obvious ludicrous hypocrisy didn't stop Musk, who went so far as to publicly accuse the banned journalists of doxing him, maliciously spreading private information in a Twitter Spaces discussion last night.
Showing real-time information about somebody's location is inappropriate, and I think everyone on this call would not like that to be done to them. And there is not going to be any distinction in the future between journalists, so-called journalists, and regular people. Everyone's going to be treated the same. You're not special because you're a journalist. You're a Twitter. You're a citizen. So no special treatment. You dox, you get suspended. End of story.
Now, if there's any remaining doubt about Musk's motivations, the Thursday Night Massacre also just happened to include the official account of Mastodon, a Twitter competitor. Twitter also began blocking many links to Mastodon, which is about as flagrant as it gets. I'm still not clear why that happened or what the half-hearted excuse is. Now, Elon Musk bought Twitter. He could do what he wants with it. It's not a violation of the First Amendment. The true lesson at the heart of this story is not about Elon Musk or content moderation. It's about what happens when an individual, hopped up on his own narcissism and power and being told he's brilliant and used to getting his way, decides to rule like a king. Absolutely. That person has nothing checking him. No board, no advisors, no bureaucracy, no one pushing back. Of course, that is the world that Donald Trump inhabited for years. He ran his weird family enterprise inherited from his daddy, which was a private business with no shareholders, no board. The Trump Organization was run almost like a medieval fiefdom, a small circle of yes men. Whatever the boss says goes. And then Donald Trump tried to transfer that leadership style into the highest office in the land, in the most powerful government on earth. Thankfully, the bureaucracy around him, the checks and balances of American government, the courts, Congress, stopped him from doing the presidential version of what Elon Musk got up to last night. Courts, Congress, regular people doing their jobs like Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, restrain Donald Trump from the worst excesses of one-man rule. I don't like this person. Get rid of them. Throw them in jail. We're not making distinctions about journalists. That happens in other countries. We fought a revolution to ensure it would not happen here, in fact. Now, luckily, the stakes are much lower with Twitter. It's not the nuclear arsenal. In fact, I'm almost loath to bring it up tonight. But there's a clear lesson, a very clear one, an important one on the same theme. You cannot trust anyone with absolute power in any domain, no matter if it's the U.S. presidency, a social media enterprise, a cable news show, a condo board association, even a pillow company. Left unchecked, they will drive it into the ground because people need checks. They need bureaucracy. They need institutions. They need pushback in all circumstances. And you certainly cannot trust power-mad billionaires surrounded by yes men and lackeys who think they see further and better than everyone, that they always have the best ideas. In that way lies ruin. We've just learned this lesson for the country. Hopefully, we will learn it in every other domain as well. But tonight, those journalists remain banned from Twitter as Elon Musk polls users about whether he should reinstate their accounts. I'll talk to one of Musk's suspended targets next.